Hey, welcome to the 167. Today we're talking about how to share Jesus with our neighbors. And if your name is Keith, you're really going to hate this podcast. Welcome to the 167.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the 167. My name is Jake Reeves. I'm the creative arts pastor for New Life Community Church, and I am not really replacing, just simply swapping today, but joined by regularly. I feel like I typically join, so I don't know how to really do this, but I'm joined by the man apparently on Sunday who weighing in on too many topics.
Then he should.
Then he should.
Are you joined or are we conjoined?
Conjoined? Yes.
Conjoined? No.
Okay.
So, what's your name?
Lucas Motley.
Okay, thank you.
Nice to meet you. Discipleship pastor
Just
here
in case
at New
somebody
Life
jumps
Community
in.
Church.
And the man with shoulders wider than, the continental United States.
Not really.
I don't know.
Wearing the once again
The hot honey.
the fashion faux pas. I wore the same shirt that I wore a few weeks ago, but when you got hot honey, you just got to wear the hot honey shirt, I guess.
If you guys are not experiencing us on YouTube, you need to go to YouTube to see all the visual jokes.
just to get a glimpse of the hot honey T-shirt.
Yep. So,
All right.
this past week, you two shared the stage, and it was one for the ages. So,
Thank you.
So I'm going to boil it down to, we are talking about, how do you actually connect and evangelize with those people around you?
Yeah.
And so, Pastor Rick, you opened it up before you invited Pastor Lucas on stage, talking about what's the craziest thing that you've done to bring somebody to Jesus. It's a challenge. And I think that's, while we're talking about that and we're looking at how do you connect with your neighbors, we're trying to show that it ranges from it's worth the absolute crazy of the crazy, and it's really easy too. But I want to know, to start off today, what is the craziest thing we have done just to connect to somebody? Doesn't mean that you had to succeed.
connect.
Just to connect somebody to Jesus.
Yeah. So as
I can't wait.
As I've thought about it, I was like, I don't know that I've really done anything that crazy. After I threw it out there,
threw it out there.
It was like, when you think of cutting holes in roofs, and the craziest things, that came to mind were really just taking a risk of having a conversation with someone who I thought would reject me or that would not be receptive. And so it's really been like, before I became a pastor, it was in the workplace. I had a number of different conversations with people that I had to initiate. And it was scary because I worked in an industry, in a trucking, warehousing industry. Just like probably a lot of other people, just a lot of shady kind of.
It's rough.
Yeah, and so I took the risk. I just said, this is the way I'm going to approach life in this environment. And so I did take risks and put my beliefs out and invited people into that. And it was rejected by some, made fun of by some. So everyone when I first started, it was called the Martin Brower Company. It was a multi-chain restaurant food distribution system. It was enormous, but we just had a branch. And so working in the warehouse with 20, 25 other guys, I gained the nickname of Oral Roberts, right out of the gate. So if they needed something in the office, it came over the intercom, would Oral Roberts please come to the office? And everybody knew it was me.
I'm impressed they know who Oral Roberts
Yeah.
is. Honestly,
I was like, I'm the guy.
The popcorn guy, right?
Yeah. So I get So
Oral Roberts University. You guys can Google it.
Yeah. So, it was a risk. And yes, there were some consequences relationally with some people, but everybody knew where I stood. And the end result of that, okay, and this is back, I wanted to use an example of not being a pastor, because a lot of times people will say, well, yeah, it's easy for you because you're a pastor.
They ask you where you work and yada, yada.
So,
yeah.
you know, I'm 60 years old. I've only been a pastor for about 24 of those 60 years. So I worked a lot of years in the secular workplace. And so in this example, there were, you know, people who kind of chuckled, made fun of me. I took that risk. I always talked, you know, about my faith. And I did have the privilege and the honor of leading a guy that I worked with to the Lord. And again, that was a risk. It was a crazy thing. So we worked nights. I worked, you know, I'd go into work at 10 p.m. and get off at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. And so we had weird work schedules. And one day after work, I said, hey, you want to just talk for a while? And we spent probably 2 additional hours just talking about faith and life and struggles. And so that risk of living a certain way and speaking a certain way then paid off down the road as I got to sit on the front step of my house and lead this person.
Was there fire involved?
No, there's no fire. There should have been. This was back in the day before fire pits were invented. I mean, you had to actually go camping. Like, nobody had thought about bringing the campfire to your driveway.
So the reverse of that, were there conversations had in a freezer truck? Because weren't you unloading?
Yeah.
Freezer
Oh
truck?
yeah.
Nice.
We had conversations in the freezer with snot sickles forming on mustaches and beards because, yeah, I worked in an environment where it was about 10 degrees below zero all the time.
Something about extreme temperatures.
I know.
Pastor Lucas.
So anyway, I know it's not super crazy, but it's an example that came to my mind of, you know, living outside of kind of that norm and taking the risk.
Sure.
Well, and you guys have more experience with that as far as the secular workplace because, I mean, I did odd jobs and stuff, but I've been in ministry almost my entire life. But we've done some crazy things. Like when you asked that question, I was kind of like going, I don't think I can think of a normal, like, I'm not a normal guy that's like, hey, excuse me, like, would you like to talk about, like, it's always awkward or always some strange situation. I've stalked my neighbors, you know, like tried to do the thing where like I time when I go out, take my trash out at the same time as them just to strike up a conversation. I think the weirdest thing that I've done here at New Life is what I lovingly refer to as ghost busting. Like we've had people that come to the church that say, you know, my house feels off. We moved into a new house. Something's going on in my, you know, and we go, okay, well, we're just going to go and pray over your house. We're going to take you took a group of the men's group.
Yeah, we took several guys from the men's group, rode over on motorcycles, most of us, and that was kind of a weird thing.
We had
packs and hut tow.
Well, we had a family that was actually a family member of somebody in our church, and I agreed to do that for their house. I was like, oh yeah, we'll come out to your house. Their daughter was having a struggle. Turns out they lived in like Lawrence. I was like, oh dang, you know, so we went out there and just prayed with the family, prayed through the house. But it's just kind of a strange process, but it turned out really well. We ended up hooking them up with a church in Lawrence and connecting them to Jesus and reconnecting them. So that was really cool.
Yep. So
yeah, I had a guy. So it ended up not fully panning out, but at least it got him into church. So when I first started at the church plant that I was at before here, I had no musicians. We had a beautiful like old 1970s or 60s Ludwig set that the heads hadn't been changed on in 20 years. It had been obscenely long. They were really, really bad. And I knew this guy from my hometown, and he played drums, but he had nothing to do with church, and I didn't want to invite him there with the drum set looking terrible. And frankly, I didn't have a budget. Like literally, like I had no budget. Essentially, the church paid me like $150 a month, and I went and spent that on paper and everything else. So, but I took that money and I bought all new heads for this drum set that I didn't have a drummer, just so I could walk this guy in, be like, dude, check out this set. And he played drums at the church until he moved a couple years later. So it at least exposed him to Jesus.
So when you say you bought paper, like papers or like
No, physically.
oh, I thought like
we-
rolling papers or
No,
like,
we
no.
did-
It's like I just had a flashback to my old days.
Oh no, no. We
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
we legit did not have like copy paper. So
Oh, that kind of paper. Okay.
He worked in grass, but it wasn't that.
Yeah,
grass.
well, I know because you were the
I
the
did
grass
work
guy.
in turf
not
grass.
good. All right.
Turf grass.
Thanks for
So-
clarifying. I feel better now.
So your conversation then shifted to referencing the early church, that Acts 2 church. And Pastor Lucas, you read us through that whole thing and kind of set up what people kind of attribute to the early church. So, and essentially they were selling what they had and living in this, centralized location, making sure the widows and orphans were taken care of first. And as you put it, basically they ended up in a commune because that was the most economical thing to be able to do that. So the real question is, when people have the heart cry of, why aren't we the early church? Why aren't we living in a commune now? Like, why don't we look exactly the same way?
Yeah,
as the
so the
early
easy
church?
answer, I'll jump in with the easy answer, and then
Make him
Yeah,
take-
Lucas can go deeper because it was his passage. The easy answer is because we are selfish people.
Oh, well.
Like, I'm not going to sell my stuff and give it to somebody else because I worked hard for that. Right? That's mine. I want to enjoy it. I like this. I sacrificed so I could have that. And so that's our mentality, probably more so in Western culture than anywhere else. But this is mine. And what's mine is mine. And if you want something, go get it yourself. Like, I'm not going to just give you something, earn it.
Well, and I think we live in a very individualistic society. It's like, we like to have our fences, we like to have our borders, we like to have all of these things. But honestly, it would be very much akin to like a missionary training center. Like if you said, I want to go to Africa, I'm going to go to, the Bible translators, and not like, they might be like, okay, well, we're going to put you up in a dorm, you'll train with us. And then, it's almost like a college. I live in a dorm, I train here, and then I'm going to get sent out for a couple of times. Then I have a place to come back to. And it's like, we're very missional in our neighborhoods, but we don't have that kind of sending mission. Like we're not living here in a commune in Gardner, and then I'm going to send you on a 2-year mission to Olathe, or I'm going to send you on a 2-year mission to KCK. And like, it's not what we're doing here.
Olathe already too gone.
Right.
No, I'm kidding.
We already live here.
I'm kidding, Olathe,
And-
we love you.
And like, not everybody lived in the commune. Like there were some people that it says they met in homes and did other stuff.
Yeah.
But the people who were like going, no, I'm like, I want to spread the gospel. I want to work on this. I want to help feed the poor. I mean, it would be like if in our new church building that we're building, if we built in a soup kitchen, a homeless shelter, and we put up dormitories so that people could say like, I want to fully commit to running the soup kitchen, the dormitory. If you combine City Union Mission
Right, yeah.
with like a school and you did all that in one compound, which that would be great. I think the problem with that is funding.
For a cool $2 or $4 million, we'll make that happen still.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is funny way every time like, churches are like, we want to be
Cash.
the Acts 2 church. And I'm like, oh man, that is a whole, I likened it to the Avengers compound. Like that is a whole different training center. I mean, it looks more like a Bible college. It looks more like a missionary training center.
Yeah. So ultimately, what, getting back to that selfishness and kind of the primary reason, it really does come down to assessing, do I want what's best for me or do I want what's best? Like, am I more concerned about enjoying my life or building the kingdom? And I know on one level that sounds like, oh, great, that no one's ever going to, meet the standard. Well, you're right. We're probably always going to fall a little bit short of that because we're human. We have desires. It's that constant wrestling. So when we were saying it's really, yes, it's about selling everything. I mean, because that's what it's about. I mean, that text is about selling their possessions, but the application to our life really isn't about Jesus saying, if you really love me, go sell everything you have and live on the street. It's really more of assessing, am I willing to sell whatever I have? Am I willing to give up something that I enjoy so that I can give it to somebody that doesn't have anything or has way less than me?
Yeah.
So it's that being introspective, assessing our own selfishness and saying, what can I do that's going to align my life more with what God's desire would be for me? And everyone's going to be, at different levels of willingness, and it's a struggle that everyone faces. Right?
Yeah. And the more that we centralize in that, I think we're going to have to come to grips with that. Currently, I think we look more like one of the outposts. Like they sent somebody out, and they would start home churches. Like we have our life groups, and we meet in the community, and within that life group, you'll see people sell stuff, minister to their life group, do those kind of things. And then what it said in those outpost things is that they met at the local synagogue. Like there was a Jewish synagogue that they would go and meet at and have church services. And so New Life Community Church, the building, it feels like like Spaceballs, the lunchbox.
Yeah,
it sounds like merchandising, but it's like New Life, the building, not the people. New Life, the building is like the local synagogue. We meet, we worship, we train, and we send out. And then we meet in home churches. We meet in life groups together. We have community, and that's where you're going to see people sell their possessions. You're going to see people, be generous in those ways, and it very much functions more like the Philippian church or the Ephesian church.
Yeah. So Pastor Lucas, you kind of laid out the three needs that people have that we can help support, that we can essentially minister into those three needs. Well, they went physical, soul, spirit. So why do we start with physical? And because even in that thing, I know some of the cynics out there would say, well, isn't that just going to essentially open you up to just being used? Like, just like, okay, yeah, here we're going to keep paying for et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. So, yeah, why start with physical?
You want to know the cheap answer?
You can take the cheap answer and make Pastor Rick.
I'm going to give you the easy answer. Because Jesus did it that way.
There we go. Hey, no, that's not cheap.
Literally, like Jesus would walk up to people, and really the thing about the physical need, it was that Jesus would use the physical need as a manifestation or a symptom of what was happening. It wasn't like, hey man, it seems to me like I'm just going to, fork out money because you can't pay your electrical bill. It was like, hey, you seem to be in a really bad situation. Like the physical manifestation of that is your finances. But that takes me to a soul problem that you have, which is, whatever that might be. You've been down on your luck. You're depressed. You're doing, like you can't seem to get ahead. People have abused you, those kind of things, and which manifests into a spiritual thing of you need to be set free of that.
Yeah.
And so it's not just like, oh, you need a shirt, here's a shirt, although that could be a very nice thing to do. But it's identifying the physical need and going, hey, I'm going to help you with this so that I can get to the soul.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to help you with your soul so I can get to your spirit.
And I think it's because, again, I'm kind of on this one track, because of our selfishness, we understand when I have a physical need, I want that physical need met. Because we're driven by our self. And so if I'm hungry because I don't have money, I'm not really concerned about my soul needs and my spiritual needs that are all reasons why I don't have money. They all compound, but all I want is someone to give me some money. Okay, so here's some money. Now let's talk about something deeper. Okay? And then as you go deeper and deeper, so it's that surface level that gets you in the door to talk about bigger things.
Well, and you can even look in Acts where it's like you have that instance where the disciples are going up to the temple and they see the guy at the gate beautiful and he's asking for spare change. They don't go, oh my gosh, we have to come by every day and give him $5 and, 5 denarii. And just, every day to support him for the rest of it. They were like, oh, no. He needs money because he can't walk.
Yeah.
And they were like, here, let me fix that for you. And then the guy runs off leaping and he gets interviewed by the Pharisees. And then later he comes back to them and they tell him about Jesus.
Yeah.
They address what actually needed to be.
Yeah, so we know at one level, okay, at a very deep level, that when somebody that we know, care about, have connections with, they are in a really rough spot, okay? we know that the answer ultimately is a right relationship with Jesus. Like, we know that. But to go to them in the midst of their dysfunction, in the midst of their tragedy, in the midst of whatever it is that they're struggling through, to simply go in and say, hey, can I pray with you? Because I know you got some, pretty bad spiritual things going on. And the reaction, more than likely, is going to be, no, I need something to eat. Or no, I need, whatever. You can pray. That's not what meets my need.
Right.
So we got to meet needs, the physical needs first. We take care of that so that we can deal with the other things.
I just envision like an extra biblical story that's, not in the Bible or whatever, where Jesus keeps encountering this guy named Keith. and Keith has bad knees or something. He's like, they're really achy. And Jesus is like, all right, let me heal it for you. And then Keith is like, peace out, that's amazing. Yeah. And then he goes and he's like jumping off of buildings, and he comes back to Jesus and he's like, hey man, my knees are hurting. And then Jesus looks at his disciples and they're like, this guy's not getting it. But
we gotta go. You gotta get deeper. There's some reason why you're feeling that.
But obviously, Jesus actually recognized the people that the physical would then transform into the.
No offense to any Keiths that are listening to.
No.
Oh dang, Keith. No, but I mean, I think we all know that person where you kind of help them. They're just kind of a helpless person.
Sure.
I think, wow, shoot, what is that? Oh, I'm going to lose that verse now where it talks about how Jesus sees the helpless and he is moved with compassion. And it's just like, that's a very dangerous thing to really get involved with somebody who needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like, we like the person where it's like, oh, you have one need. Here's your need met. Now let me rake in this harvest of Jesus.
Right. Like, you don't have a car. Like, a car is going to unlock a job. That's going to unlock, but when it's like, we've encountered a lot where it's like, oh, you are buried in problems. You are buried in
25
family.
steps into a bad decision.
100%, and that's really daunting. But it also makes me think back to something that we've said from on stage at New Life a lot. And I know some people, they struggle with it, but it really is true that if you are having a true servant's heart, you can't ever be abused.
Right.
Like,
you can't be taken advantage of.
You can't be taken
advantage of if you're a servant, because your job, if your heart is to serve.
Some hot, broad-shouldered man said that on stage. I don't know
was.
who that
Hot
was.
honey?
Either.
Hot honey, broad-shouldered man.
And someone says, oh, well, can you do this too? Sure, I'm here to serve you. Now, again, there are reasonable boundaries.
You're not turning off your brain.
Yeah. So, but if somebody says, "Oh, well, if I help them, they're going to take advantage of me," it's like, well, you're just there to serve anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and I always tell people who are very mercy oriented, I'm always like, you have a tendency to be a doormat, and what I tell them is, your job is not to take darkness away from somebody, because people are darkness generators. It's like, and so if I could just take your woes from you, you would have a lighter load. That's not what actually happens. You just take darkness and they just fill right back up.
Sure.
And it's like, your job is to give light to people. Like, we are salt and light. And so you can give light to somebody, and then they go, well, and then they want to put their darkness on you. Be like, oh, no. Like, that's not my responsibility. It's not my job is to give you hope and light. It's not to take on your darkness. And I think that's the difference between, that helps you not be a doormat.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of getting to the last bit here, again, Pastor Lucas, you were talking about a lot of people get too nervous, too wrapped up in actually connecting with their neighbors, their coworkers, their, little league parents. They share that they're like, oh, I haven't been to enough Sunday school to, knock that out. And I thought you boiled it down really well into just the question of, how are you really doing? And so what do you say to the person that's nervous for what comes after that even?
I mean, I think that's, like I said, where I'm going. You're like, what is the craziest thing? I'm going, every time I tell people about Jesus, it's awkward and crazy.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to embrace the awkward a little bit. And I'm honestly, like, confession time for our listeners, I'm the worst at this. Like, I always brag on people like Ebby Van Horn, where I lead life groups, and someone will, be like, how was your week this week? And they'll be like, somebody died. And I'm like, and I just sit there and I'm like, And in my head, I go, I need to say something to validate. Like they'll share something really deep, and Ebby is so good at going, oh my gosh, that must be such of a hard thing for you to go through. What got you through that? And I'm like going, oh man, she's so good. And so I think it's just reps. Like I had to go, okay, I recognize that and do those reps. But that is why I think 7-minute stories is so important to our culture as a church. And I've had people comment to me because they're like, this 7-minute story on the podcast was 30 minutes long. And I'm like, I know 7 minutes is like, I'm trying to tell people like, you should be able to boil this down in 7 minutes. Like that's the goal. Sometimes it's longer. And I love all the stories, but like to be able to say to somebody when they say, oh man, here's what's going on in my life. And you go, oh man, that is really hard. Are you like, how are you getting through that? Like, do you have somebody, just asking good follow-up questions. And they were like, well, what did you, and they ask you and you just say, and then boom, 7-minute story. This is what Jesus did in my life. This is what he's currently doing in my life. And that's why I think 7-minute stories is so important. It's why we do it in life groups. It's why we share them on the podcast. But that's the thing where I'm going, the goal should be about 7 minutes because if you're on the ball field, you're going to get about 30 seconds.
Yeah, because they're gonna be like, I'm paying attention to my kid.
Yeah, and that's the important part that you don't have to have every answer. You just have to have
your story.
An answer. Like you just have to have something to say, and it's your story. So Jesus healed a blind guy, right? So then they're saying, all right, who's this Jesus? Is he the? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was blind, and now I see. That's what I can tell you. Whatever you think of him, I don't know. This is my story, and if we know that and we're confident in sharing that, that goes a long ways. And so, what you have to be willing to do is think through, when I ask this question, how you really doing? And when they share something, it might be something really deep. And you're okay with that. And to say, man, thanks for sharing that with me. And I don't have a lot to offer you. Here's what Jesus has done in my life. And it's been helpful to me in my journey. But I have some other resources, right? I don't have a lot. And then that's when you can point, to the church, to our website, to the podcast, to point them to some, maybe you don't have the Romans road memorized, right. But you're like, Jesus is your only hope. And I'd be willing to kind of walk through that with you. And you don't have to have every answer. You just have to have a place to get started.
Say that again. I'm gonna walk what?
Yeah, I'm just gonna walk through that with you.
With you, I think is the key there and that's why I tell people you need to be in a life group because you're gonna meet somebody and you're gonna go, I don't know what to do. Invite them to your life group. It's that walk with you thing where it's like we promote Right Now Media and it's like if you have Right Now Media, you could say, man, I don't know the answers to that, but there's a study on that on Right Now Media. Would you like to come over?
Exactly.
Let's put our kids to bed. You come over, and we'll do it together.
Yeah, the world does that all the time. I mean, apart from church, apart from God, people are like, oh, man, I got this group that I hang out. You should join us, man. We're going to go out. And it's like, oh, yeah, I want to be a part of that, party crowd. I want to be part of that in-group. So I want to, I'll go with you and hang out. And yet somehow it feels weird to us to say, man, your life is a train wreck, right? So assessing that, I have an answer for you. I would love for you to come be a part of the community of people that have meant so much to me. And so come to this life group.
Or come to church, and then we'll meet for coffee and debrief.
Yeah.
So, no, I think it's such a big deal to just be able to say, share what you know. Say, I don't know on the stuff you don't know, but I'd love to walk through with you. Yeah. Because that's going to speak volumes, even more so than memorizing.
So you don't have to know
Roman road.
Everything. You just have to know something.
Yeah,
just
there you go.
Just know one thing
there you go.
And jump on there and then
know your own testimony.
Yep.
So, hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on the 167. But make sure you stay put for that 7-minute story or a little longer coming up right after this.
Hey, welcome back to the 167. I am here with Lauren Sherwood. How's it going?
Hello. It's going all right.
All right, so tonight you're going to tell us a little bit more about your story. You came in and did your 7-minute story, your first one. How long ago was that? Probably like a year?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to tell us a little bit more about your story, how God worked through your life. So what do you want to talk about tonight?
Basically my journey from high school and beyond, because I spent most of my from 6th grade until high school, my senior year, in juvenile detention, and I got my act together for about 3 years, and then after that, things just started going south, and made a lot of bad decisions. I thought a lot of things were predetermined for me, but now looking back, everybody has a choice to make.
Talk to me a little bit about that, because we do actually have younger listeners. I was talking to a family, and they were like, oh yeah, we were on a road trip, and my boy, like, he found the 167 and just basically binged the whole thing. So I mean, you're saying that was like 6th grade, you're saying?
Yeah, I got locked up when I was in the 6th grade and didn't get out until I was 18.
What do you feel like led to some of those things that you could, talk to some of our younger viewers about?
Peer pressure is a big one. A lot of times people think that you don't have a choice, but you really do. A lot of people say, well, the neighborhood that I lived in, I didn't have a father in the home. Those are all they're unfortunate circumstances. But as an adult, you have more of an ability to filter everything out and make your own choices. I wish I would have been able to do that at a younger age.
And I'm sure it wasn't just like one day you did one thing and then you ended up there.
No, it was progressive. I was pretty much bad kid since I was in preschool. I got in trouble all the time. I remember the first time I got in big trouble, a kid was going to sit in my chair, so I pulled it out from under him, and that was in preschool, and it was just pretty much downhill since there until I was old enough to get in real trouble.
Yeah. So you go into juvie, you graduate when you're 18, and you kind of get things together for a couple of years?
For a couple of years, yeah. I was living with my mom and didn't really have a whole lot of decisions to make for myself, but I lived with my mom for a year, and then I moved out and kind of fell back into the ways of the world. They say that listening to music with like bad lyrics and everything doesn't really affect you, but subconsciously it does. It pre-programs your mind to make different decisions than you otherwise would if you'd have your head in the Bible like you should.
Yeah, it's hard to, commit a felony when you're like, Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah.
It's more, you want to get in that same mindset. I've talked to people about that where it's like, I don't know if it's causation or just that, I'm mad, so I want to listen to music that's also angry, and it just becomes a cycle. Or
Yeah, it
I'm
works
okay,
for-
and I listen to music, and then it puts me in that.
It works for a little bit until it doesn't, until it starts changing you.
So you're out, you do that for about 3 years, and then you fall right back in.
Fell right back in. It got a little darker as an adult because I had access to more things and more influences. And, I was a gang member since I was 12 years old. And it's different as a juvenile than it is as an adult, like night and day difference. It'll either consume you or you'll try to play both sides of the fence like I did, and it doesn't work out.
What do you mean by that, play both sides of the fence?
Well, you can fool anybody, but you can't fool God. So I was doing gang member stuff, doing bad things, and my family didn't really know about it. Because with them, I'm not saying bad words or anything and then go out with my friends, and it's completely different. I was like two people. And you can fool everybody but God.
So what was the change for you then?
Change for me, so I was looking at 48 to 96 years. I didn't ever think that I was getting out. I ended up doing 8.5 years. I took a deal for 10 and did 8.5 on it. And for the first 4 years I was in there, I was still doing the same bad stuff. You're surrounded by criminals. There's no good really in prison. You have to make it yourself because everything around you is just really bad. So I lost contact with my family, and that's pretty much what did it. And that's the same thing that got my act together when I was in juvie. They shipped me out of state. So when you get taken away from everything that you care about, you got to find something. And all I had was God. And when I found God, everything else started falling into place perfectly.
So did you find that, was there like a prison ministry that reached out to you, or did you just kind of do that on your own?
There was a friend of mine that was introduced from my aunt. He went to her church, and he came and showed that even a perfect stranger that has nothing in common with you can care. And him and I worked together. I was his man on the inside, and we got a lot of Bibles to people who otherwise wouldn't have Bibles or wouldn't even picked up a Bible. You know, there was people that I reached that were full-blown Satan worshipers that thought that that was the cool thing to do, and, you know, lead by example and people follow.
I think that's a powerful thing too, because I think about the verse in the Bible where Jesus talks about, you know, I was sick and you cared for me. I was hungry and you gave me food, and I was in prison and you came to visit me. And it's like that, like, you know, if not for this guy, like physically coming to visit you, you know. So I think that's a testimony to all of us. Like, what can be done if we just you know, we're like, oh, I have sort of a relationship with this person that's on the inside. What if I just go visit him?
It would make a big difference, because a lot of the reason why people are in and out is because they don't have that family support and they don't have that hope. And when you have a taste for the criminal life and you go in and you get out, and that's pretty much it's really, really hard to explain, but it's ingrained into you. It makes everything else twice as hard. You know, somebody who's walked the straight and narrow most of their life, the average Joe, never had a parking ticket. You know, it'd be easier for him to be a Christian than it would be somebody who's an ex-gang member, who's shot at people, who's been shot, who went to prison for robbing people. You know, I had to change a lot of things, and it's really, really hard, and it's still a daily struggle having to fight those demons inside my head, because a lot of times, you know, they come back.
And how do you do that, like on a daily basis?
Constant dialogue with God. It's not necessarily prayer, but it's more like a conversation, like a subconscious type thing. You know, I don't always get answers, and I can't sit here and say that God has spoken to me directly from heaven with his voice, but there's subtle hints, things that he changes in life. You know, there's times where I pray real hard about something and it happens.
That's good. Like, it really does, I think, make a difference for people in a daily walk where you're hearing from God, you feel like you can speak with him, you have that relationship. It's life-changing.
It is.
All right, well, thanks for coming in and sharing that with us tonight. We'll see you guys here next time on 7 Minute Stories. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardner.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.